Hello everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money killer commentator. On today's show, Other Charitable Organizational Structures, Part 5 in our series on end-of-the-year charitable giving strategies with attorney Les Raatz. Welcome to segment 5 now. Wow, Les.
Thanks again.
Well, Les, we're learning a lot here, and this has still got time to do this. This is still on our side of the year. And remember, planning should not have to wait till the last 30 days, right? I mean, we should be thinking about this all year long. So if you're saying, Steve, I wish I would have had more time to think about it, and that makes you paralyzed by your analysis because you don't know how to go forward, this is a good maybe introduction for even next year's thinking, and especially if you're an ongoing benevolent giver. This should be part and parcel of your thinking, not only your benevolency of your wallet, but how can I do it with the best efficient tax results as well? So I think that's a huge issue. I want to talk about private foundations, pooled income funds, and donor advised funds. Let's go to private first. I don't like anything out there, Les. You know, I have my image of what a charity should be, and I want to make my own foundation.
Well, I have a lot of clients that have done that, and many people, it probably fits what they want to do. Private foundation is a nonprofit, either corporation or trust, that's set up by someone in any state that then goes and applies for and obtains exempt status as a charitable organization. Difference between a private foundation and what we call a public charity, which are the two different wings on this. They're both charitable organizations. They both can take charitable deductions, but a private foundation doesn't have broad support. Okay, it's strictly for the families or a tight group of people. And private foundations then are subject to different kinds of regulation because they're not public. And the government, through the years, has the legislation has been passed to kind of keep an eye on private foundations to see that they're not abused, like they're not used to just fund compensation for children and so on and so forth, although as a practical matter, there's a lot of benefit that is obtained from that. So they can be set up readily, easily, and depending on what they do. If they are doing nothing but paying their assets over to public charities, then they're typically called grant-making private foundations. And any public charity can be a beneficiary as long as they distribute at least 5% of their net asset value. So that's all. Every year.
They could just be a central hub for other legal entities. Wow.
Right. They file a tax return. It's called a 990 PF. But in the last, say, 5 years, they have added burdens to the 990 PF filing requirements. But they're useful. They are family controlled, and they can always be fairly easily modified and revised.
In your experience, and I've noticed that some people that have private foundations, they're looking not only to push forward something that's close to their heart, they have an ideology, but they also want to take care of their kids, maybe employment, or maybe to have that person ahead of the foundation. So the spirit of the family enterprise, the philanthropy of it all, stays in the genetic line.
Yes, I mean, that's certainly a driver for many folks. They say this is a device that makes our children think outward, or we would like to have it where they think outward, and this is where we sit down and we may say, who would you think is worthy of getting distributions from our foundation? And so as you pursue that, you know, the problem with, one of the issues with foundations that worries certain of our clients is, well, maybe these folks are going to view this as less altruistically as we have, and sometimes they build in sunset provisions where this thing can't last for everybody's lifetime. But that's a call for the particular client.
So it can be a time-certain event or into perpetuity. Just depends on how you're going to.
That's exactly right, and who's the scope of the beneficiaries, which charities.
Well, let's shift a little bit and go into pooled income funds. Kind of popular, but not that well known. I mean, in our circles, it's popular, but not well known to the public.
And that's true. I mean, pooled income funds are around, and what they are established funds. They're not community foundations per se. The design on them is to simulate sort of charitable remainder trust, okay, where I make a contribution into it, but I get a possible return that comes back to me based on the group's performance. So I don't have to set up a CRT on my own. I don't have to set up a private foundation on my own, but I can now take advantage of having this pre-set up infrastructure where I get a return that matches this. I mean, it simulates in a way that charitable remainder trust we talked about, which provides for a current income tax deduction on what is deemed ultimately fair value go to the charity, but at the same time, I get a return that is partially taxable to me.
So what's the distinguishing difference of when I should use a pooled income fund in a charitable remainder trust?
Well, that would mean I think the biggest distinction is the fact that you don't have to feed and water it. Okay, it's up and running already. You just have to get comfortable with the management and decide that's what I want to do. And not many. I mean, it's not used as often. Certainly not used as often as other techniques, but PIFs, as they're called, are out there, and they do their jobs.
And when you said, I like the part, sounds like low maintenance is the way to go. If that's your heart, you don't want to be sitting there micromanaging this, pooled income fund could be the way.
Could be the way. There are definitely costs in there, but from your side of the fence, it's a pretty straightforward process.
What about donor advised funds? They have picked up, since I've been in this business 35 years, I have to say the last decade, these are hot. I mean, really hot. Talk about what is it and why are they now becoming so popular?
Community foundations and so on are public charities, okay? So you make a contribution to them and you're under the 50% limit, you're under the appreciated property, a gift without reduction for capital gain property. I mean, you have all these advantages in a way, except it's administered by this other group. In a way, it's like your own mini, sort of private foundation, if you will, without having to set up your own private foundation. Donor advised funds are donor advised funds. You would give money to, a local community foundation, or there are all kinds of brokerage firms with large, donor advised funds, and you would say, I would like this money put in, I would like it distributed to these other charities, and I want to be able to revise who gets it, and I would like you to do this. Now, the word I keep saying is like, because the actual control of those funds is the community foundation or that foundation.
I wanted to ask you about that because the way you said it at first, I'm thinking like, okay, how much control do I have? Technically none.
Technically none. No. They have to have the ability to do what they want to do. They will listen to you, and most of the time, unless it's something they find truly a problem, will follow through with your plan.
And you could cut bait and run if you're not getting along.
That's right. I mean, you can't take your money out of it, but you can stop feeding it or doing what you want to do with it. That's right.
Okay, now in your experience, because I like this is already you're going to a central location that could have multiple organizations. It's helping this community. It's helping many. So you're going to get a list. You're going to go out. I'd go out to the internet. I'm going to look at the community charity. I'm going to say, wow, look at all these people. Well, that's a pretty good number. I don't know if I like them all, but I like enough of them that this could be a play for me.
It could be. Yes.
In the public side, when you recommend this, do they have to go out and look for a community that has donor advised funds then? Because most of us in the public domain, we're not going to know anything about this.
Well, many times the client has already heard from their friends that, hey, there's a community foundation here in the area, and they've liked it, and they mentioned it to me, and I'd like to know about it. And normally, typically I'm aware of what these organizations are. On a national level, you can also do that. Like I said, there's larger funds. I would say they're sort of comparable in a way with private, with pooled income funds. I mean, they're both run by somebody else. The difference is pooled income funds are more like simulating charitable remainder trusts, and donor advised fund foundations are more like simulating private foundations without having to administer it, because you end up with the same, mostly effective consequences.
If I'm going to go ahead and make this choice, and I like the idea of having somebody else do it, and although some people may have a bit of a phobia about giving control over, so there's an issue.
Right.
If pretty much the community's already playing with charities that I like, I don't really see an issue. Did I hear you say I can go up to 50% of my AGI on this? Did I get that right?
On the community fund, on the community foundation.
So if I don't need income, there's people that are giving away their income, right? This could be a big. This is a big write-off at the end of the year.
Well, yes, and when I say 50%, say it was a cash contribution, it'd be 50%. If I'm trying to give appreciated property away, and by the way, I could give appreciated publicly traded stock away to a private foundation and get a fair market value deduction.
Normally, up to 50%.
No, these are the 30% limitation.
Okay, so you're partitioning two types of property. The securities, if I heard you correctly, would be one example. The others, I'm writing a check. So cash is king sounds like
Cash
it.
is king in that area.
Okay, but over here, you could still get rid of appreciating assets like stocks and so forth.
Right, and private foundations have tighter limitations too. But so you're dealing with 3 different numbers essentially, 50, 30, and 20, and they all have their quirks. And certain assets, are limited to what are called basis deductions instead of fair market value. So that if you had a 0 basis asset that was worth a lot, you would have to want to make sure if you're going to get a fair market value deduction, or am I limited to a basis deduction? And those are subtle issues that come up in a lot of this giving area that have to be analyzed. That sounds like a huge distinction. You have to be, you can't just blindly do this without at least knowing what your consequences are. I need some math done here before I make my call at the finality of it. Yeah, math and characterization. That's all right, private foundations, pooled income funds, donor advised funds. I want to thank Les for being my special expert on this series on end-of-the-year charitable giving strategies. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or your financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.